Trusts UK and Middle East. In my last lecture, I talked about what the problems can occur when you just make a basic will. Just to recap, when people make just a basic will, for example, in this scenario of Mr. and Mrs., one passes away, everything according to their will passes to the surviving spouse, and we assume, because in their will they've written that when one dies, everything goes to the surviving spouse, and when they pass away, everything goes to the children. We forget that when one passes away, the surviving spouse doesn't necessarily stay in the same status quo. Anything can happen in their lives. So, for example, if they remarry, their new spouse will have first claim on the estate. If they go to a care home, social services will take their home and their assets. If they become bankrupt, then bankruptcy trustees will take their assets. So the basic will does not provide any protection because it's not an active instrument during their lifetime. The will is only activated when we pass away. So when the surviving spouse passes away, let's assume nothing has happened. They didn't remarry, they didn't go to a care home, they didn't become bankrupt. Surviving spouse has also passed away, and now their assets, according to the will, go to the children. Before it goes to the children, probate takes place and the cost of that is incurred. The cost is deducted and the children inherit. When the children inherit, it becomes their personal estate. If any problems like bankruptcy, divorce, dying young happens in their lives, whatever they've inherited from the parents is also used up in that settlement. I had started to touch on the asset protection trust. Universally, this trust is called a living trust. In America, Canada, it's called a living trust. In the UK, the Inland Revenue call it a living trust too. But I've given it the name of Asset Protection Trust. This is just the commercial name I've given it because it protects your assets. So it looks after your assets. In the UK, we have an inheritance tax exemption limit that the government has set. So the first £325,000 of our estate is tax-free, which means when we pass away, the first $325,000 is tax-free, and anything above that is charged at 40%. For simplicity, in this scenario, I have just kept a basic estate. I haven't brought in inheritance tax issues. I'll be introducing those in future lectures. I just want to explain the concept of the trust and how that provides protection. The parents write a will, but at the same time, during their lifetimes, they create an Asset Protection Trust, APT. In the UK, £650,000 is the maximum tax-free allowance that's covered in the trust. But universally, when we use it, then if there's no inheritance tax liability in your country, then it doesn't matter how much the estate is, it will still be covered in there. This is immediately effective and it lasts for 125 years. The way that it works is that the parents, Mr. and Mrs., put their assets into the Asset Protection Trust during their lifetime. This is why it's called a living trust. They are the trustees, and they also nominate their two children as the trustees and beneficiaries to take over after they've passed away. So during their lifetime, they're the trustees, which means that they're in control. They are also the beneficiaries, which means that they use those assets. They're benefiting from those assets. So, for example, their residential home They're living in it. Businesses, bank accounts, whatever they have in there, they're using it themselves. The benefit of putting the assets into this trust are that they have control, but it's protected with a wrapper of the trust. When one of them passes away, surviving spouse becomes the sole beneficiary of the trust. They're still a trustee, they can buy and sell, do whatever they want. It's the value that's covered. So they are the trustee and the beneficiary. Now, if the surviving spouse decided to remarry or go to a care home or become bankrupt, nobody can claim on the assets that are in the trust. It's a very, very important point. So, just to repeat that, when one person has passed away, surviving spouse, according to the trust, is the sole beneficiary of the trust. If they were then to remarry or go to a care home or become bankrupt, nobody can claim on the assets that are in the trust because they're protected with a boundary. Because the assets are still intact, when they pass away, the children inherit. And also, if you remember, probate took place here when the surviving spouse passed away. The other benefit of putting it in the trust is that when the second person passes away or the first person passes away, there's no probate to do. So anything that's in the trust, you put it in your lifetime, it bypasses probate. When the second person passes away, children take over. The children are now the beneficiaries. So they can take their shares, and whatever shares they take, as long as they reinvest it in the name of the trust, the assets are protected. They will then write their own wills and they will leave it to their children. So they will appoint their own beneficiaries and trustees, and they will do the same, and they will do the same. So this is how this trust, because it lasts for 125 years, this is how it protects your estate for 3 to 4, 5 generations. This is what we call bloodline planning. I hope you found this interesting and beneficial. If you have any questions, please email me on the address that's coming up on the screen. And also, please don't forget to share, like and subscribe when you watch this video. So, goodbye from me, Tahseen Aslam, Chief Executive of Abacus Wills and Trusts UK and Middle East, and I'll see you next week.